Well, I guess it became obvious to me that HIV and AIDS was an issue of sovereignty or decision making over one's own body, and that was an issue for feminism for ages, right? That was you might think of it as a primary feminist issue. So it seemed obvious to me the emergency, the AIDS emergency, was one that grew out of individuals being able to have agency over their own bodies and be able to have communication about their bodies and other bodies, reproductive decision making, for example. So, you know, it's always really important to me that my engagement with AIDS activism and with ACT UP was not about me seeing that gay men were under attack and I had to lend my energies and skills and political fervor to a gay male issue. It was always an issue for me. I always felt personally involved in the AIDS crisis. And I think a lot of the women that I worked with, a lot of the men and women I worked with in ACT UP, I think felt similarly, right? That this was something we were doing for our own lives. We were saving our own lives. We weren't trying to save other people's lives. And feminism made that obvious to me. I mean, it's hard to say what feminism makes me understand and what it makes me see because it's just how I think, how I see things. But it seemed to me that the questions around HIV/AIDS were questions that women and feminists have been dealing with for a long time. And one of those was about sexual agency and sexual freedoms and sexual rights. So suddenly sex was dangerous for some people, but in fact, sex has always been dangerous for women in terms of it being dangerous reproductively, in terms of it being dangerous in terms of stigma, so that women were always in peril for sex and sexual desire. They might get pregnant outside of wedlock, they might want not to bear a child that they have to that they are impregnated with and not have choices about that. So all of those issues that were always true for women were still true during the AIDS crisis. Women were suddenly vulnerable in a new way, but they were always vulnerable. And now there were some men who were seeing their bodies as vulnerable in a way very similar to how women have always felt vulnerable.